the thing about starting Trewstar is I knew how that all worked. I understood what happened in a boardroom. I understood how they thought about adding new directors. I understood what it meant to be a good director. And therefore, when I talked to people, I was in a position to sort of vet and evaluate them. I don't think there was another company I should have started other than this one. I was 55 when I started it. By the way, one of the most important messages that I would tell any woman is that life is long. And I started it when my youngest child was in 8th grade. I had the time.
Welcome to the podcast where motherhood meets reinvention. I'm your host, Sharon Macey, and this is Mom to More. I'll be speaking with remarkable moms who have embraced the art of transformation, crafting their more by leveraging the skills they hone as stay-at-home moms. They'll share their experiences, struggles, and successes as they return to a former career, pursued a passion or hobby, or charted an entirely new path, giving you the clarity, motivation, and inspiration to help you answer the question, what do you want to do when your kids grow up? Welcome back to a new episode of Mom to More. Hey, before we jump in, are you feeling that itch for something more? I've got you. Grab my free guide, 6 Ways to Reinvent Yourself Beyond Motherhood at momtomore.com. It's fast, it's free, and yep, the link is in the show notes too. Okay, folks, we are in for a real treat today. My guest today is Beth Stewart, founder and CEO of Trewstar Corporate Board Services, a search firm that places top-tier candidates on corporate boards. How cool is that? With over 20 years of experience as a board director herself, Beth deeply understands what makes a board effective. She's worked with Fortune 500s, mid and small cap, and pre-IPO companies across the country. Beth began her career at Goldman Sachs and later taught at Columbia Business School. She's a recognized expert in boardroom dynamics, featured in outlets like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Forbes, and is the subject of a Harvard Business School case study entitled Beth Stewart, Navigating the Boardroom. Now that is cool. Beth is a Wellesley and Harvard Business School grad, a proud mom of 5, and a grandmother of 6. Welcome to the show, Beth. I'm so thrilled we're going to be chatting today.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here. And by the way, 6 + 1 on the way.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, chat for a second. 5 kids. I bow down to you. We have 3. Yeah. Where did you raise them, and did chaos reign constantly?
It's funny you should ask. My 4th son, I have 4 sons and then a daughter. My 4th son's birthday was yesterday. He was 31. I've, through the years, kept a book for each one of them about what they did. I wrote in it. We obviously have, I have albums for each one of them that's sort of just their baby pictures, but then there are all these videos. And a number of years ago, I had the videos downloaded onto something so that we could, watch them on a computer. And he wanted to watch the videos of him. Yesterday, the answer to the question, I always knew there was chaos, but now I can confirm it because I've watched these videos. It was a madhouse, things that I think now I don't have the energy for any of that. But we would have like a birthday party for a 2-year-old and actually invite people over, and they're, and then these boys, we had to pull them apart. They're knocking each other down. They're biting, Anyway, yes.
So yeah, chaos. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, we're super excited. Our eldest, our son, is getting married. So I'm thinking being a grandma is going to be the next phase of our lives, which we're really looking forward to.
You have to remember that the first thing before you're the grandma is you've got to get along perfectly well with your daughter-in-law. And when we're done with this, I'm going to give you some coaching tips.
Okay. Thank you for that. Okay. We're going to backtrack for a moment. What were you doing before you had kids? And I will also point out that you were one of the very first analysts ever hired at Goldman Sachs. So I'm assuming you were also...
I was the first.
Oh, you were the first, the actual first. And I'm assuming you were also the only female analyst back then.
Yeah, well, there was only one analyst. And so, yes, I was the only one.
You were it. Okay.
The program developed, and there were numerous others in the subsequent years, and there were more women. And there were a couple of women that were associates. But yes, being a woman was a rare thing.
On Wall Street back then. All right, so you did Goldman Sachs, and then you went to business school. We're going to talk about that later, the Harvard Business School, because there's something hilarious surrounding that. When you started having kids, Did you intend to lean into family life? Talk to us about your sort of early mom story and what that looked like.
I very, very much wanted to be a wife and a mother. There wasn't any question in my mind. And in fact, when I also very, very much wanted to get a Harvard MBA. And I remember thinking to myself, wouldn't it be cool to be a wife and a mother with a Harvard MBA if I never did anything with it? We were actually married for 6 years before we had children, which was my husband's choice, not mine. I would have started sooner. But it turned out that that was a positive in terms of, I realize you can't give advice to people because everybody's life is so different. But one of the advantages of being older was I did have more control over my schedule as I started this process of having children. So I was 32, which I know it really doesn't sound very old at all now, but I was a vice president by then at Goldman, and I was in charge of teams and what have you. So it made it easier for me to be able to focus and have some flexibility around when I went to work and when I went home to accommodate being a mother.
Now, you also met your husband at Goldman, right?
I
You want to
did.
share that very funny story about your first date?
So I was this analyst, and back in the day, there were these, just big rooms with big wooden desks. And my big wooden desk was right next to his when he was a summer associate. But I didn't, and I'm not really quite sure what story you mean, but I'll tell this one because it was fun. He went to Dartmouth. We didn't date while I was still an analyst and he was a summer associate. Then he came back as a full-time associate before I left, but we still weren't dating. And he came to a Harvard Dartmouth football game when I was at Harvard Business School. And there was an after party that I was actually invited to by somebody else. And I get to the after party and there he is. So I knew him, but I wouldn't say I knew him very well. And I would say by the end of the game, he was a little inebriated. It was 4 o'clock. It was a Saturday afternoon in the fall, Cambridge, Massachusetts. It was beautiful. He pulls me over away sort of from the crowd and he attempted to kiss me. And I said, I can't do that. There are all those people over there that I'm not. And he said, well, how about if we just throw caution to the wind and let's get married in the morning? And I said,
which didn't happen. Okay.
I was married to him about a year later.
That's a great story.
Yes.
That's a great story. And I'll also point out that you and I stumbled upon one another literally at a Dartmouth reunion. My husband also went to Dartmouth and we were there for a very special reunion. And you gave me your card and now we're here. So there you go. So when you started having your kids, you were at Goldman. But after having 3 kids in 4 years, you asked your boss at Goldman Sachs, someone who was one of your biggest supporters, if you could go part-time, and he did not support you.
Right.
And said, not going to happen. Right. He did not. So what was going through your mind at that moment, and how did that shape your next chapter, knowing that we have many next chapters in our lives?
Look, I was crushed. I was distraught. Goldman had been my life. That's the only place I'd worked. I came back to Goldman after business school. I thought it was a great place. We had great friends. My husband's there. It was like our family. And the idea that this gentleman wouldn't let me work part-time. I mean, this is kind of fun. Remember Hank Paulson, who turned into our Treasury Secretary? He was in charge of investment banking at that time. He actually helped negotiate my departure because it was kind of fraught, this relationship with this man.
Right.
There has been a reunion of that group that I was in at Goldman, and I've now seen that man who I was so upset with way back when. And I learned things about the stress that he was under as a manager of a department, and that he really couldn't deal with the idea of somebody working part-time. I didn't know it, but they were firing people. I think I was so wrapped up with these children. And in any case, if he had let me work part-time, I'm forever grateful to the fact that he was so difficult and really such an asshole about the whole thing, because my life wouldn't be the same. That boy whose birthday it was yesterday, I might not have been having a birthday with him if Goldman had let me keep working. So I'm incredibly grateful that I stopped. And then lots of other wonderful things happened.
Right. So that was an unexpected silver lining. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hey, Beth, we are going to take a quick break. And when we return, we are diving into your company, Trewstar, and all things board positions and a whole lot more. So don't go away. And now a quick word from my sponsor, Ally Shoes. I got to tell you, these are some of the most comfortable shoes I have ever worn. They're designed by women for women, like finally, right? And engineered with perfectly placed padding. So I can literally wear these all day. And I cannot say that for other brands I've worn. And I'm not the only one giving positive reviews. InStyle, Business Insider, and CNN are all saying the same thing. Oh, and they have a really cool origin story as well. So flats, heels, boots, you name it, they have it. Ally is letting me share the love with all of you. Head on over to Ally, that's ALLY.NYC, where new customers and listeners of the pod will get $40 off your first pair of heels. All their heels, like Classic, Kitten, Bold Block, Sexy Slingbacks, with special code MOMTOMORE40, and 10% off your first pair of boots and flats, so 10% off of each, with special code MOMTOMORE10. Ally is reimagining how comfort and function support women every day, and I love that. Thanks to Ally for sponsoring this episode. Hey, we're back. Okay, your company Trewstar, you place top-tier candidates on corporate boards. But before you started the company, which I will admit is a total niche idea, like you were the first person to actually do this, when did you get your first board position?
Well, one of the things that made leaving Goldman, sort of soften the blow is that and back to how it helped to be a bit senior, although I was 36. And again, that's just seems so not senior. But I had a client who was going public, and that gentleman, a man named Martin Buxbaum, to whom I will be forever grateful also, grateful for the bad things and grateful for the good things, if they all tend to work out. Anyway, Martin asked me if I wanted to go on the board of General Growth Properties. And that just started for me a career of being a corporate director. And that was how, roll the clock forward to 2010, when I was rolling off the board of General Growth, that I realized there was an opportunity here, that it was clear there was pressure that was going to be put on boards to add women. You could see it happened in Europe. There was 40% mandate in France and Norway. The 30% club had started in London. It was coming across the ocean, and none of the big search firms were really addressing it. They weren't addressing it the way I knew at Goldman Sachs. If there was a problem that you could solve for your client, that Goldman would have a solution. I didn't think the big search firms had any solutions at all, from listening to them at conferences. And I could see the quality of the other women at those conferences, and they're all dying to get on a board, and it wasn't happening. So that's why I said, I can do this. I'm going to start it.
How did it play to your strengths? And then you realized this was such a great fit for you on so many levels, and you could do this, you could make money, you could show up 4 times a year, for these board meetings, and you could still be home with your kids.
Right. That was the wonderful thing about being, if I had to say, how did I get on the boards that I got on? Yes, I was qualified, but yes, I was lucky. I think the timing is everything. Yeah. But I think the processes today are more exacting than the way that I got on a board. But when the thing about starting Trewstar is I knew how that all worked. I understood what happened in a boardroom. I understood how they thought about adding new directors. I understood what it meant to be a good director, and therefore, when I talked to people, I was in a position to sort of vet and evaluate them. I don't think there was another company I should have started other than this one, which is kind of neat. I was 55 when I started it. By the way, one of the most important messages that I would tell any woman is that life is long. And I started it when my youngest child was in 8th grade, and the boys were off in college, or, one of them had started working. I had the time.
Right. And that's very common, a story that I hear from women once their kids are in school full time. In your situation, you had kids going to boarding school, so there was even more time. We had one at boarding school for a couple of years, so I get that. And so that's usually when women are like, okay, it's now more me time.
Yes.
because I have that flexibility. I wanted to ask you a little more about that. So when you launched Trewstar, what was it like sort of going back in after such a long break, and what gave you the confidence to do it? And did you have those what if I fail moments, and how did you push past that?
Okay. Well, what gave me the confidence was I actually thought it was going to be easy because it was also obvious. So that
Right.
wasn't really a problem.
Ha ha ha. Okay. Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I can't emphasize enough. I really did know what to do. And I don't mean
Mhm.
I knew how to do a board search, but I knew how to get assignments. And that was, I realized this was a demand side problem to get women on
Right.
board. It's not a supply side problem. So I did what I call smiling and dialing. And, I did a variety of things to find all the Wellesley alums that were on boards
Right.
to call and say, I've started this. And then just leapfrog this connection
Mhm.
to that connection.
Right.
So it wasn't really lacking confidence. And didn't take that long. That this is hindsight is very blurry. I'm sure I was worried about. It took maybe a year or so
Mhm.
to get an assignment, but I
Okay.
did the first one for
That's some
free.
normal ramp up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
did the first one for free. And then honestly, if you can think, I mean, I don't know, I must have been impressive. I don't know what it was, but there were men that hired me. It was me and a 25-year-old, an associate, and that's it. And by the time I was ready to do the second board search, I'd only done one before that. And these were
Right.
guys who were chairs of nominating and governance of big
Mhm.
public companies. And
Yeah.
what was neat was we were always successful. We worked real hard. We were successful. Great client service, which I learned at Goldman Sachs, how to run a
Mhm.
process I knew from Goldman Sachs. And just one thing leads to another. And then you
Right.
you have enough of them that people calm down a little bit about the risk that they're taking
Right.
of going
Right.
with the boutique.
Oh, and clearly you know what you were doing. And also, I think another message to moms, which I've talked about a lot, is you knew you have that skill, right? You knew you had that skill, and you knew that this was something that you knew that you knew. You just had to make sure that other people knew that you knew how to do this. You were also, timing, right? Timing was good for what was happening in the corporate board world, wanting to get more women on it. I also point out you have an entirely female staff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've attempted over the years to hire the odd man or two. I don't mean an odd man, but a
Yeah.
man or two.
I mean,
And it just happens that there aren't any at
yeah.
TrueStar right now. And in the day, we're just helping women have a
Yeah.
chance, right?
Yeah. Right.
Well, our process was just interview the women first.
Right.
It wasn't, and if we don't succeed at that, and you're the client, and it's a client service business, if you're not happy with the women that you meet, we'll open the search to men.
Sure.
Do
Sure.
you know how often we got asked to do that? There's
How
now
often?
we've done 350 placements.
Okay.
I would say, because of the history, maybe 90 of them were first, what we call the
Mhm.
True Star rule. Never,
Never.
never. And the reason that doesn't mean we haven't now placed males on boards because we
Sure.
have, but that was a testament to it couldn't be we're just slapping a woman in a spot. You
Right.
had to get somebody who was absolutely qualified for what the client wanted, and coincidentally, they were
Yeah.
female.
Right. And they're there. They
They're
just need to be found, right?
exactly.
But
Yes.
clearly you're
Well,
really strong at in your niche.
yes. Again, that was the niche now that we're really strong in is we
Mhm.
now specialize for all type candidates at the board level.
Right.
But you know what the neat thing is about what we
Hmm.
do? People think it's mysterious. It's not mysterious. We're only dealing with successful people.
Right.
Right? We're talking to people who have achieved a C-suite level role or an equivalent, in medicine or some of the other fields. So, as it related to those women, can you
Mhm.
imagine the woman that gets to be the CFO or the chief marketing officer? My God. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like, what's not to like? They've been dealing with men for their whole career and they succeeded at that.
Yeah.
That translates very well to a boardroom.
I can appreciate that. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I want to shift a little and talk mom skills. It's the skills that we all fine tune when we're raising our kids. So which one served you best as you considered starting your company, and how did those play out?
It's interesting that you say that because I think my mom's skills have developed over time. Yes, they do. And I'm not telling you that I wasn't, short-tempered and I didn't yell and, in the midst of all this chaos. Um, but what I think I learned over time and from other successful women, because I'd ask women, why did they choose you? And what you'd hear over and over again, it was kindness. I'm not saying it's every single woman, but what stuck with me, kindness, caring about the individual. Is everything at work? Is everything going okay? You need
Yeah.
a little extra. I'd like
Yeah.
to think that my approach to managing a group of people evolved from, frankly,
Yeah.
how it isn't the same techniques I might have used. If
Right.
I I think if I'd started Trewstar when I was 35 or 45, I might not have been as successful at it as I
Yeah.
did starting it at 55.
I love that. You started later. You were wiser, you were grittier, you were more resilient. You have been there and done that.
Yeah.
You have a better sense of who you are at
Yes.
55 than you do at 35. And so all those things, in addition to being a mom, play into the future success that you created
Yes.
because that was so inherent in who you are.
Yeah. True. I agree with everything you said.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
I feel like there is one other aspect to this I shouldn't neglect to say. And and you haven't asked me, but what role did my husband play? Okay. And there are two things that he never said no to having another child.
Mhm.
And he was always incredibly supportive of my career and my starting Trewstar.
That matters. You're right.
It does
Yeah.
matter.
To have
Yeah.
someone who has your back. I mean, it is, in a perfect world, a partnership, right? It
Yes.
is a partnership and it should be a partnership. But to have that partner who supports you in your endeavors and is your cheerleader and your champion, that is really important.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were lucky in that regard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I
Exactly.
want to skip back to the fact that you were, because I love the story, you were initially rejected from Harvard Business School. And you
Mhm.
wrote back to the admissions officer saying, quote, everyone makes mistakes. And then the letter goes on. That is so bold and ballsy,
Yeah.
Beth. And I love that. So what made you so sure that you were going to get in a second time? And what advice do you have for women who are facing rejection or closed doors?
Yeah. Well, um, I didn't know I was going to get in a second time. I mean, at the time I wrote that
Yeah.
letter, I hadn't started working at Goldman yet. So, but I did tell them that I was the analyst, that Goldman accepted me, if you will, after having done
Right.
quite a large search. That was part of that letter.
Right. Right.
They didn't flinch. They didn't write back and say,
They didn't
okay.
write back.
They didn't write back.
It was such a great letter. This letter is in your, and I want to have that in the show notes, a link to the Harvard Business School case study.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
just the fact that they have a case study about you is extraordinary.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
continue.
And the fact that I saved the letter and gave it back to them. I've actually been in the class when they've taught the case. And, and the professor stands up there with the chalkboard and sliding the board, doing all
Right.
this stuff. And one of the, one of the questions he asks is what kind of a person would write that letter? So I get to listen to what everybody says and they're quite, they like ignore the fact I'm in the room. And I don't
Okay.
know, some woman said something snippy about what kind of a person
Mhm.
was that would write a letter like that. And then for the last 5 or 10 minutes, I take the professor's spot and answer questions, like what really happened and what did I really do and
Right.
all that. And I said, before I do anything else, I want to say to that young woman up there who said whatever it was she said,
Mhm.
and why don't you ask yourself, what kind of a person would actually save that letter and give it back to Harvard so everybody else could learn from it? You little, you know what. Anyway,
I just thought it was extraordinarily ballsy. And,
I mean,
and
maybe that's whatever the DNA that I had that said, I don't need to know how to do a search. I can just start a search firm. I may be all part of a piece.
I thought it was a great learning lesson. So,
Well, this was important. You said, how do you deal with rejection?
yeah,
Start a company. The amount of rejection that you have to deal with is enormous.
right.
And it isn't easy,
No, but you
This,
have to have that internal compass that
yes,
says, I so fervently believe in this, and I
right,
know what I'm doing is necessary and it is right for this time. And
right.
women need this, and companies need this, and I'm
Yes.
here to fill that void.
Yes. No, I completely believe in the quality of the product and the service that Trewstar delivers. And
Hmm.
so it's just it's every day. I have to be thinking about, and some of the other senior women, you just have to be thinking about marketing all the time.
Right. Good
So,
point. All right.
yeah.
So for moms listening and
Yes.
contemplating what their second act might be, which may very well include founding a business, what is your best advice for taking that leap, even after years away from the workforce?
Well, I would suggest that you take a leap into something that you do know. The other thing that was really reduced the stress a lot is by starting a professional services firm, I really didn't need capital. When you have, it's an extra layer of complication. If
Funding.
whatever you want
Yeah.
to do, you don't either have the money yourself or you need it. Or if you're starting something because you need whatever compensation you're going to take out really matters to your family. That's really, really hard. And so, I mean, again, everybody's got to do something different, but before you jump into something, minimize the financial strains. Maybe
Yeah.
what you ought to do is not start a company if you really want to make money. Maybe you ought to go back to a traditional job. And
Hmm.
notwithstanding a lot of the press about work from home and people stopping those programs, I think it's the gift of COVID. And I think it's easier
Hmm.
for today's women to be in a corporate environment because there is more flexibility. There are a lot of programs to help women ramp back in.
Oh, I've even interviewed someone for the podcast, Deb Perkins, board of directors, and she helps women find that seed funding.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So
yeah,
it's
know that.
definitely out there. And you know what's interesting, Beth, is most of the women I think that I've spoken with, yes, some have got returned to former careers, but a lot of them have gone the entrepreneurial route.
Yes.
You know, they had an idea, they started a company,
Yes.
tiny, 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 and then grew it from there. I mean, everything we do has to start small and tiny with baby steps. That's just life.
Yes, but the point is there are two options.
True.
I mean, you
Yeah.
don't, right? And if you're going to do the entrepreneurial route, you really ought to make sure you got the money, understand the
Yeah.
pressures that are going to come from outside money.
Good point. Good point. Beth, my friend, our time is drawing to a close, but I have a question that I
Sure.
want to ask you that I ask all of the extraordinary moms that I have the privilege of interviewing. And that is, since this is the Mom to More podcast, Beth Stewart, what
Mhm.
is your more?
Well, I'm in the process of writing a book,
Oh,
and you're going to love what the title of the book is. It's the
okay.
it's the husbands who stayed home.
Ah, stay-at-home dad. Okay.
Because we kept meeting time and time again. I thought I was going to be interviewing divorced and unmarried women
Hmm.
because how could you make it to a C-suite level and have children and still have a husband? And time again, they were still married women who had uh, children who were, doing well. And the answer in every single case was there was a
Yeah.
husband who didn't necessarily plan to stay home when they got married. And just to me, totally fascinating. How do you manage?
Yeah.
Um, how do you as a couple? It wasn't what you expected. That's not the man you thought you were marrying, and yet you're still married to him. How did you do
Yeah.
it? And
Fascinating.
so anyway,
Yeah.
that's the more is that we're in the middle of that. But we've talked with an artist, a writer, a policeman, a rabbi, a couple high school teachers, and none of these men, when they got married, it wasn't necessarily what they planned to do
Yeah.
or at the
Interesting.
level
But they were willing to pivot
they
like
pivoted.
we all have to do in life,
Yeah,
especially with kids. And oh, you know what? Well, when that comes out,
that
we'll
have to reconnect.
chat again. I
Yes.
know. I
So one
know.
of
I
the
know.
things that I'm happy about, this is another thing, is like, don't push yourself to do everything today.
Yeah.
One of the things I realize is I don't have to write this book today. I don't
Right.
have to write it this year. People take a while to write books. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we're taking a nice leisurely, we're enjoying ourselves um, as we write this book. So
Which is
that's some more.
smart. And I think one of the women I interviewed a while back, she said, you know, we will have time throughout our life to do everything we want to do, just
I
not all at
agree.
once.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And that's like, give yourself, just relax. I mean,
Yeah.
you're not a relaxed person, but just allow yourself a little bit of
A little grace.
Time, a little grace. Yeah.
Yeah, a little grace. So Beth, please tell my listeners where people can find you online, on social media, your website, and folks, everything, as always, will be in the show notes.
Sure. Well, we have a website. It's www.trewstar.com. We're on LinkedIn. I'm on as Beth Stewart, and we have a Trewstar Corporate Board Services LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram personally, but I never post, although I do enjoy a lot of stuff that other people post on Instagram. Okay. Particularly the woman who started the We Do Not Care Club.
I know, she's hysterical. Oh, I know.
Hysterical. If you haven't seen it, it is the best. Anyway, that's where you can find us on LinkedIn and our website.
Terrific. Beth, I'm so glad we stumbled upon one another at the Dartmouth reunion, and I love your story, and thank you for sharing it with me. It just, what you've done and what you've accomplished over many years, the fact that you started later in life is so just personifies Mom to More. So thank you for sharing your story.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me to share it. I appreciate it.
Before I sign off, a quick favor. Following the Mom to More pod means you'll never miss an episode, and it really helps the show to grow. And if you'd be willing to leave a 5-star rating and review and share an episode with another mom, I'd be super grateful and appreciate your support.